My name, for those who don't know me, I'm Neil Walker. I'm the Professor of Public Law here at Edinburgh, and I've known Jo for 25 years, so it's a great pleasure for me to introduce her today on the occasion of the launch of her new book. I was thinking at the weekend about unlikely things to happen during lockdown, and I was watching the television, and I'm a great fan of athletics. And there was an athletics competition from Oslo called the Impossible Games. And these impossible games involved people pole vaulting in a stadium in Norway where other people pole vaulted in their back gardens in France. And they tried to coordinate these two activities. And basically the whole process unfolded. And I thought, an online book launch is maybe an impossible event as well, but we will do our absolute best to make it possible and enjoyable. And as for me, it's certainly a great pleasure. As I said, I've known Jo for 25 years. I've known various members of her family for just about as long, Leo and then Alf, not for quite that length. And I think this book in many ways I'm not so much involved in commenting on the book, but let me say something. I think it's an excellent book. I have read it from cover to cover. I think it's one of these rare books which manages to be both a point of reference, but also something which says something really quite innovative about the subject. She looked at the relationship between citizenship and constitutionalism in a way which I think is very, very original. She also deals with a number of very, very topical themes, including the issue of populism and the issue of transnational citizenship. She also methodically goes through the whole question of citizenship as a status, citizenship as an identity, citizenship as a vehicle for rights, etc., etc. And so, as I said, I think it's both a magnificent reference, but also something which is a very innovative theoretical treatment. So I very, very much look forward to the discussion. Now, let me just say that just to quickly take you through what's going to happen. First of all, Jo herself is going to introduce a book, and then her colleague Sandra Seubert from Frankfurt University, Professor of Political Theory there, is going to take 10 minutes or so to respond. Thereafter, Helen Davis from Bristol University Press, who have made a splendid job of producing this book, will say something about the book and the process and the press more generally. I think without further ado, I should pass the microphone to Jo to introduce the event.
Thank you very much, Neil. I just want to start off by talking a little bit about the book and why we're here today. But first of all, I want to say thank you very much to everyone who is here today and everyone who's made this book and this event possible. And it's quite some event. The pandemic might have deprived me of in-person book launches, but it's pushed me in another direction, which has made it possible to bring an incredibly varied group of people together under one Zoom roof, as it were. I'm particularly pleased that members of my family are here in the Zoom, as well as friends from many different parts of my life. So this is my book launch, and this is my book. You've already seen it because Neil was waving it. It's been a huge pleasure to write the book and to work with Bristol University Press to bring it to fruition. Of course, there were times when having the actual book in my hands and seeing it published seemed a remote and unlikely dream. But I've been buoyed throughout the process by the support and engagement of friends and colleagues, too numerous to mention individually. And if you want to know who they all are, then have a look in the acknowledgements. They all said that writing a book called The People in Question was a great idea and that I should keep going. So I did, and here we are. So let me talk about this idea first. Oh, and here I put a few words on this slide. That's the contents page on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, there's my photograph of Andrew Rogers' statue, Individuals, which is outside Sydney Law School, which I used to make the book cover. That's not my photo that they used. I believe that Andrew Rogers very kindly supplied them with a photograph of his own, which is somewhat more sunny than the one that I took, and it's probably a rather better photograph. So I was really delighted to have that on the cover, and I'm very happy to talk about why I chose that as the cover later on, if you want to. I wanted to write a book about citizenship that got me closer to understanding the core of this tricky and complex idea. Citizenship, from a legal point of view, is primarily focused on status issues. It's something that a lot of people call nationality. And it's the connection between a person and one or more states, which we most often see evidenced by the passports that we carry. Citizenship is exemplified also by the legal rights and duties which we associate with it, like the right to vote, although that's actually more complicated than it appears at first sight, so I'll not go into that right now, or we'll be here all afternoon just discussing that. But when writing this book, I didn't want to just stay in my legal comfort zone. I wanted to use a frame of analysis which captured many different facets of citizenship, remembering that citizenship is significant nowadays, not only in states, but also below states and above states. This is what is sometimes called citizenship beyond the state. We have the subnational level. Think about devolution in the UK and how it, in many respects, what's been happening during the pandemic has been an expression of differential citizenship across the UK. And then we have the supranational level. Think of European Union citizenship, brought to much greater prominence by Brexit in the UK. I decided to see whether we could understand citizenship better if I used the idea of constitutional citizenship as a reference point. I had an intuition from the beginning that this would better enable me to capture some aspects of citizenship as an ideal and citizenship as an expression of identity. As Neil said, I try to go through those different things, as well as the connection between citizenship and the domain of the political. I borrowed the well-known expression, the people, much used these days for better or for worse, partly to capture these broader ideas about citizenship. So for most of the remaining short time I've allotted myself to speak during this launch, I want to explain a little bit more about this paradoxical idea of constitutional citizenship and why it helps us to literally put the people in question. Constitutional citizenship describes the place where citizenship and constitutions meet. That does not necessarily mean that we will find substantial information about the nature and scope of citizenship, of national citizenship in any given state's constitution. In many countries, the regulation of citizenship in and by the national constitution is sparse and more elusive than direct. Many constitutions say almost nothing detailed about citizenship. And I guess that wasn't really what I expected when I started looking at these things internationally. I knew that it didn't say anything in the UK because the UK has this peculiar unwritten constitution. But I thought that when I looked at it more widely, I would find a lot more information about citizenship in national constitutions, but in fact, I didn't. Quite often, citizenship at the constitutional level is an empty box or a cipher that has to be given content by some other legal or political means. However, if we take a close look at the constitutional principles and norms, we see that states often invest constitutional significance in citizenship, for example, by providing for citizens' constitutional rights, by identifying various constitutional identities and ideals, and setting those as measures against which citizens are assessed, I guess, in large measure. Sometimes constitutional citizenship is rendered meaningful not within the Constitution itself, but by reference to constitutional interpretations by bodies such as constitutional courts. This can be controversial, government by judges. Very happy to talk more about that topic in the Q&A. So the first thing my book does is paint a thicker constitutional picture of citizenship in many countries. I provide lots of different examples and try to range across all of the continents of the world, save Antarctica. New examples are always incoming. And let me give you just one to give you an example of the type of thing that catches my eye. Just this week, the German Federal Constitutional Court ruled that a woman with US citizenship who has lived in Germany since 2013 was wrongly denied German citizenship under the provisions which aim to offer restoration of German citizenship to the descendants of those who lost German citizenship after fleeing the Nazis between 1933 and 1945. This is what happened to the woman's father, who was a Jew, who left Germany in 1938. However, she was denied citizenship when she asked for it because her parents were not married at the time of her birth. Germany's constitutional court has ruled that this denial infringed various provisions of the German constitution, such as non-discrimination between children who are born inside and outside wedlock. This offers a great example of why I found myself constantly trying to hit a moving target when I was writing the book. But I also want to point out some paradoxes. At the same time as states are bigging up the constitutional significance of citizenship, they also regularly treat the status of citizenship as rather light in ethical terms. This leads to states often being willing to bestow citizenship on those groups whose membership could benefit the interests of the state, like investors, for example, or take it away from others deemed unworthy, such as those suspected of certain types of terrorist offenses. This is nothing new. States have been doing this for hundreds of years. For example, in the interest of trying to organize all people into single nationality boxes, states regularly withdrew citizenship from women who married foreigners, and this was between the middle of the 19th century and the middle of the 20th century. This was one of the several ways in which women's citizenship was often undermined by legal means. Furthermore, international law helps states do this. International law has definitely not always been the place to which people could look to find standards which reinforce an inclusive approach to citizenship in the interests of avoiding statelessness. This means it's always important to remember that when we look at ideas like the place of citizenship in relation to the Constitution, we're also thinking about concepts like which have changed over the years. They're not static, and the very process of interpreting them leads us to reinterpret what they mean. That leads me to the last few comments I want to make in this short presentation. I should point out that when I started to plan the book, I had the idea of writing a short book which was accessible to a general audience. I wasn't originally trying to write an academic book. I want to apologize for writing what is quite a long book and probably quite an academic one, but I hope it's still reasonably readable. And I'm probably committing precisely the same sin with this presentation. I wanted to make it short and accessible, but maybe it isn't. Anyway, the reason I wanted to reach a wider audience was because of the point I made at the beginning of the book. Citizenship has acquired a fundamental importance in relation to the organization of human affairs into polities. And in that I include the European Union as well as states. As such, it may be an empty vessel into which many different types of political aspiration can be poured. It allows states to choose populations, but also to control them. But some of the most egregious crimes against humanity, such as slavery, the Holocaust, which I already in effect referred to in the earlier comment, and apartheid have all involved the stripping and/or denial of citizenship. Citizenship has also played a role in the breakup of Yugoslavia and in the human suffering that followed thereafter, and in the violence and persecution that the Rohingya in Myanmar face as a people. Lacking or being refused the status of the citizen has been a part of the rhetoric of depersonalization applied in all these cases. On the slide I'm showing you now is a quotation from The Guardian that I would surely have used if it had been published before I finished my manuscript. And nowadays, the idea of the people is very much in question. We certainly need to be vigilant in relation to the reconstruction of constitutional citizenship in ways that may exclude vulnerable groups, migrants, ethnic minorities, perhaps those with disabilities, who are all excluded from full citizenship or find their belonging called into question. And there may be a decisive threat to the ideals of citizenship based on equality and human dignity. In fact, a substantial part of the book is devoted to looking at the impact of the politics of populism on citizenship and how populists close down the discursive space within which constitutional citizenship can be constructed and reconstructed in a more democratic manner. I also devote considerable space at the end of the book to discussing the increasingly complex governance of citizenship. So state citizenship regimes are hardly islands, but they're interconnected with each other in all sorts of ways, horizontally as well as between separate states, and also vertically through EU law and international law. So for a person in the EU, sadly no longer me, citizenship rights will be located in a variety of different sites of authority and lawmaking, including the EU treaties, the EU legislature, and the national legislature. Explaining the fragmented governance of citizenship is not only an important legal task, but it's also important for understanding people's everyday lives. And as I suggested in an essay which I wrote just before the book was published, there's every reason to persist with the constitutional analysis of citizenship as we move into the post-pandemic world. My view is that struggles in relation to citizenship around the state and the constitutions of states and the people are not likely to disappear in the short or the medium term. On the contrary, it's possible to see many respects in which they'll become more intense, not least because of the massive reconstruction of human mobility that the pandemic has entailed. It's important to be clear after the pandemic, just as it has always been, about who are the people and why some individuals are included and some are excluded. If I've successfully made the case for constitutional citizenship as a lens for studying citizenship, then this case remains before, during, and after the pandemic. So that's it really. Thank you for your attention to this short presentation. And it just remains for me to do a little bit of selling the book, which I need and indeed want to do. So you'll see that, of course, there are many academics on this call, and they'll, I'm sure, be encouraging their libraries to buy a copy. You can get it. You can get an e-copy now, although I don't think most libraries are getting physical copies at the moment. But e-copies can be organised very quickly. Our own university library did it almost instantaneously in Edinburgh. And if you're also interested in buying the book for yourself, Bristol University offer a launch discount, reducing the price to £45 using that discount code. Now, don't worry about that. We're planning to email that discount code to you tomorrow in case you want to use it. It's available for a week. So that's everything. And I shall now stop, if I can get my stop the share. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jo, for that excellent introduction. So without further ado, I'll pass on to Sandra, who's going to speak for, I think, up to 10 minutes, just with some initial comments on the book. Sandra.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jo, for organizing this event and for inviting me. It's an honor to be with you, although only digitally. And as a discussant, I see my role in raising some questions and then steering discussion with the audience, which I can only imagine and not see. So I start with some reflections on the ambition of the book. So when Jo elaborates on the concept of constitutional citizenship, she undertakes a very challenging enterprise. It's the combination of an empirical and conceptual questions that she raises. This combination of empirical and normative questions is something that links political theory and legal theory, I guess. And I think that much of the credit the book has is this contribution to this interdisciplinary discourse that we are having since I met you in the BEU Citizen Project, which I was involved in. So, and to be honest, it reminded me of Aristotle's Politeia, what you are doing, because Aristotle, don't worry, I'm not going into that, but what he's doing is asking the question of the best constitution, what is a good constitution? And in the middle of the book, he's just mapping the variety of constitutions around him. So what Jo does in her book is also asking what constitutional regimes do I find around me in Europe and all over the world? And it's an impressive very informative for all those who want to get information on that. At the same time, you are asking this conceptual question of what as you call it, constitutional fundamentals are. So in a way, what is the basis of our constitutions that make them good constitutions, which is an evaluative task and not only a descriptive task. And yeah, among the most important constitutional fundamentals is equality. We call it a leitmotif. This is the basis of our modern constitutional thought. And nevertheless, it's contextual and it has historically evolved with progress and regress. As we all know, it's not an accomplished task because we're still struggling to include or to fight against exclusion on the basis of class and race and gender. So I don't have the time to dwell on this methodological point about the dependence of the empirical on the normative and vice versa. I'll just make a remark on these constitutional fundamentals, as you call them, because I think that is something where I can tell something as a political theorist, and it drives the transformative dynamics that we are currently facing. So, as I said, the normative fundamental of modern constitutions is equality. As a moral conception, you're referring to equality in the sense of dignity and equal respect, which is a human universal. And nevertheless, the idea of equality, as I said, evolved and specified over time. As political equality, it became, it entered constitutions by way of revolutions in modern times and became the basis of other constitutional fundamentals like constituent power and entitlement to shared rule. So in her book, Jo refers to a paradoxical dialectic of modern constitutions, which is mediating the universal claim to equal respect and the special treatment derived from our particular interaction as political equals within bounded political communities. So on the one hand, the question of what we owe to each other as citizens of a state or Republican citizens, on the other hand, what we owe to each other as human beings or citizens of the world, Weltbürger as Kant calls it. So the paradox describes a tension between the universal and the particular, which has driven and continues to drive the dynamics of modern citizenship. The universalist tendency inherent in the claim to an equal entitlement to freedom, which runs against the particularistic constraints of its own realization, which is the membership in a bounded political community. But this normativity of modernity, as I would call it, has entered modern constitutions in the sense of certain claims to protection for non-citizens. So in principle, modern constitutions embody to some extent this universal claim to protection just on the basis of being human in principle, but de facto, as Hannah Arendt famously pointed out, the right to have rights depends on not just being human rights, but being citizen rights. So that is the only guarantee in her view to really be on the safe side. So this raises the question how to become a citizen, who should be included and on what basis. And that is, as you already mentioned, a very, very contested terrain at the moment. And we are leaving the empirical aside here because, of course, we can map how different citizenship regimes are dealing with these tensions, but you're also interested in answering the conceptual question, which is what would be the normatively justifiable solution? And what can the theory of constitutional citizenship contribute here? And in the part 3 of your book, chapter 4 to 6, you are dealing with this contested answer. You are showing how populists who are nativists And nativists tend to be populist, but it's not the same. So nativists who always take this question to be already answered, and globalists or cosmopolitans who think that membership is something that is constructed and continuously reconstructed more fluidly. As you said, the people has become central concept in political discourse again, but often in a way that is deeply irritating. The people are, we find exclusivist definitions of the people again. So with phantasms of homogeneity that openly attack the pluralist constitutions of modern democracy. And on the other hand, we find some rise for reappropriating the revolutionary meaning of the people as well. So it's interesting to trace how these movements are telling the story. Are they telling the story of a traditional national collective people, or are they creating new stories? And now I'm finally almost done. I'm coming to the questions that I would like to present for a discussion, if you like. One thing is, you say the normativity. Citizenship is a normatively dependent concept, dependent on more general moral principles, which have to be spelled out then. So what if the normativity of modernity, with its morality of equal freedom and respect, is already embodied in constitutions? What would this imply for the politics of inclusion? So what would be the role of the constitutional citizenship here? In light of the fact, which you also mentioned, that this normativity of modernity is under pressure now with this exclusivist stories of peoplehood. And the other possibility would be just to think of constitution and citizenship as normatively dependent concepts, in the sense that are dependent on contexts. And then we only have a variety of contexts in which we can then describe this constitution relates to this concept of citizenship without ranking, and no possibility of ranking this. And we are just having constitutional identities, something which is highly debated at the moment as well. If you think of Poland or the UK in relation to the EU, yeah, defending your constitutional identity. So, and then the second question would be, does the normativity of modernity create a dynamic towards citizenship beyond the state? Would you say that there is a certain dynamic going on here with maybe citizens as agents of constructions of new constitutions and new political communities? With regard to the European Union, we could say, well, is there a new constitutional moment, or a possibility of refounding? If you, as you said, we have subnational and supranational possibilities here. So what do you think drives this dynamic? I think I will stop here, just put that on the table, and looking forward to your input. Thanks.
Many, many thanks, Sandra. Could I now pass the floor to Helen Davis from the publishers to say a few words?
Thanks very much. I wanted to say really how delighted I am to be a part of the event today. It's been a real privilege to have worked with Jo on her latest book, and I'm just so pleased that she chose to publish it with Bristol University Press. For those who maybe don't know so much about us, we are a fairly new university press. We have a commitment to publishing world-class scholarship that's able to challenge existing ways of thinking about the world and put forward new ideas for addressing global social challenges. As a not-for-profit publisher, our aim is really to help authors disseminate ideas that matter and have the potential to make a difference. Bristol University Press was set up so that we could push forwards the kind of publishing that our in-print policy press has been so well known for. So for over 20 years, Policy Press has been publishing thought-provoking books designed to tackle important issues, particularly in areas of social policy and social justice. In 2017, we established Bristol University Press to take forwards that mission of publishing with a purpose in new subject areas starting with law, politics and international relations, and economics. When I was setting up the law list, my aim was really for Bristol University Press to become known for publishing law books of the highest academic quality and which would explore global issues that impact on people's lives. I think Jo's book ticks both of those boxes and is exactly the kind of publication I was envisaging when I was first thinking about the law list that we wanted to create. What I would say is writing any book is a labour of love. It takes a lot of time, energy and commitment to see it through. But writing a book which is able to successfully navigate the complex relationship between citizenship and constitutional law and the tensions that arise between the two during a time of both increasing globalisation and national populism is just no mean feat. I think this book represents an incredible amount of time spent researching, thinking and writing, and it's wonderful to be able to celebrate Jo's incredible achievement today with so many people and see that hard work and dedication recognised. So I hope you will all enjoy reading the book and can make use of the discount that's available to everyone that's attended today. And thank you very much for inviting me to join.
Oh, Helen, thank you very much for these fine words. I mean, so the last word is actually for Rainer Bauböck, who is a long-term colleague of Jo's. They've worked together in various contexts, most recently as part of the Global Citizenship Observatory, along with Jelena, and also along with Martin Dink, who is, I think, also in the audience. And I know that Jo has always been intellectually as well as personally very close to Rainer. So it gives me great pleasure to pass the floor to Rainer to make some conclusionary remarks.
Thanks, Neil. Hello, Jo. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
This has been a terrific debate, but a very serious one too. And Jo asked me to end it on a somewhat lighter note. So this is what I'm going to do. I'll reflect not so much on the content of the book, but on the title. And maybe even after listening to Jo and to her explanations, to her presentation, to the answers to the questions, you may have wondered a bit who exactly Jo refers to when she writes about the people in question. It's a slightly irritating title. What's the question and who are the people she is talking about? Is it about questionable people? Does she talk about people like us? Don't worry, just read the book. You may then find out that it's about the question how the people are constituted and reconstituted through constitutional citizenship. And if that is not sufficiently clear to you, just think about how we, the people, who gather in cyberspace to celebrate the book and its author, have been connected through membership in Jo's large transnational network, and how our mostly distant relations to each other are mediated through largely informal and unwritten rules. In Jo's ecumenical interpretation, you might even call this our constitution. I'm getting a call, sorry. There is, however, one rule that this evening's sovereign has spelled out very clearly when sending her instructions to us, the citizens of the network. This is the glitch that is not supposed to happen, that you get calls while talking. Okay, so let me retrace my steps. So there is a constitution that we all observe. We think we know what the rules are, but Jo was really anxious about spelling out one of the rules very clearly in her invitation. So let me cite an authoritative version from the preparatory document for this meeting. Quote, "This is meant to be fun and celebratory and not too serious," unquote. So let's follow this rule and raise our glasses. I hope you have them all ready. To Jo, to her book, and to quote finally also the subtitle of the book, "To having fun in uncertain times."
Right. Okay, I'm just going to wait until I'm joined by my lovely partner, who is lean out slightly so people can see you.
Hi, Alf.
Who's been a very, very important part of finishing this book. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, cheers.